Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Astrology Now with professional astrologer Babula Clement and myself, Cheryl Gottschall, where we'll dive deep into the energies surrounding the new moon in Libra, a celestial moment that invites us to reset the scales of balance, harmony, and human connection. But this isn't your ordinary Libra lunation. There's a lot going on. Babul and I were just having a pre-chat before we started recording, and it is a ripper for sure. And so we're going to talk about a lot of that. And also, there's a few layers of mystery here because we've got the asteroid Haumea coming into the picture as well. We've got another layer with the Earth, Sun, and the interstellar object 3I Atlas having an alignment, which has been all over the internet for quite a while. What does it mean? We don't know, but let's have a little chat about that. So join us as we discuss this and more through the new moon in Libra and the threshold where balance becomes transformation. So, Babula, how are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good, actually. With everything that's going on, I'm doing pretty well.
Right. And just a reminder to people who are watching that we are only doing this podcast once a month now on the new moon. So, because, life is busy. So, and some of the things we were having a chat about before we started was just reminding ourselves that in the astrological background, we have Pluto and Aquarius, which is about control and restriction via technology. And I was asking Babul, the traditional ruling planet of Aquarius is Saturn, which is about contraction and rules and regulations, boundaries, among other things. And Babula, I was just reading about to demonstrate this, we now have 17 countries in the last 3 months who've rolled out or passed digital ID. So there seems to be a mass coordinated effort to get this done now, all at the same time. So we're living through that right now, bringing together digital ID, digital currency, digital border control, and AI, creating that totalitarian nightmare that we're all cringing against. And that's sort of just the beginning. But at the same time, I was asking Babula that isn't it interesting that the traditional ruler of Aquarius is Saturn, but the modern ruler is Uranus? So, how do we navigate all that? Because they are very different energies. What are your thoughts?
They really do. They really do. And the older traditional rulers of signs, just to backtrack very briefly, before the discovery of Uranus in the 1700s, there were only 7 known planets because they were visible with the naked eye before the development of strong enough telescopes, which brought about the discovery of Uranus. So Saturn was the last planet. It was the planet at the end of the solar system. So it represented the border, the end. And then with the discovery of Uranus in 1781, that was a period, and I won't go into this in great detail, it was a period of great revolution on the planet, scientific revolution, the American Revolution, the French Revolution. There were just revolutions going on all over the place in all fields of life. So your Saturn is the constraints, borders, rules, regulations, structure, and so on. And Uranus is the rebellion and the revolution
Mm.
against those limited boundaries, not only of human life and governance and so on, but even of consciousness and intelligence itself and knowledge. Now, it's interesting that both of those planets still are relevant for the sign of Aquarius. I'm more of a modernist in the way I tend to lean more towards Uranus as the ruler, but I understand the role Saturn has to play here.
Mm.
Because if you remember back in 2020 and 21, when we had lockdowns all over the world, Saturn was going through the sign of Aquarius,
Mm.
and the people, Aquarius, were being locked down.
Mm.
That was such a relevant word at the time, you know. But Aquarius is a fixed air sign. It's a sign that represents great intelligence, knowledge. But like all signs, there is a more challenging, difficult quality to the sign. And in Aquarius, it can be a tendency to have very fixed ideas. So ideologies come under the rulership of the sign of Aquarius, and a fixed belief that everybody should be like this, or everybody has to follow these rules and dictates the entire country, the whole religion, the whole world. And so, you know, there are people who've been working for a long time towards taking over control of the whole world with a one world government. And that's underway right now.
Mm.
So, so Aquarius has this kind of dual energy in a way through the rulership of those two very different planets. On the one hand is that those kind of fundamental rules. See, Aquarian people or people with Aquarius strong often can have quite a fixed idea on how things are and how they should be. And the Uranus side of that can be if we're really wanting to evolve and grow and aware, we need to be open to having a new idea come in and shatter our old belief system. And I think that's the way humanity is hopefully evolving. You know, I think many of us, I know I can speak for myself over the last 5 or 6 years, have had lots of ideas about this world, like just shattered and you know, crashed. And we've had to wake up and expand our thinking in a really big way and keep an open mind, because the Saturn rulership of Aquarius can be a tendency to have a fairly closed mind and adhere to a particular belief. Like politically, are you on the left or are you on the right? Well, what about neither?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, or are you this or are you that? What
Yes.
about neither? I'm just me.
Yeah.
Know, and sometimes I have that point of view, and sometimes I see something quite differently to that.
Mm.
So this is the kind of territory where we're moving things through, you know, and I mean, I know since living with my grandchildren, even just that, you know, we've got a little community here in this household. Like I've had to let go of a lot of my old thinking about how I think things should be,
Mm.
because that's not actually how they are. And I've had to adapt to how they actually are.
Yeah.
You know, so it's got a lot to do with that. So we're rapidly going through this revolution and evolution, and but we're coming up against our fixed thinking and fixed ideas and fixed beliefs.
Well, isn't it interesting that, like we're living in the age of air now, I think since about the 1980s, where there's been a rapid growth of information and ideas, and a free flow of ideas, but those in power don't like that free flow. They want to control the way people think, and so they feed us certain narratives. And I was just having this conversation earlier about, and we choose which narratives we're going to hook into, I suppose. But the best approach really is to look at them all at the same time and then, use that discernment and go, well, this sort of matches this, but this whole thing about, you know, uh, with Aquarius loving that freedom of thought
Yeah,
is what we're facing with the act to try and suppress it at the same time.
that's right. And that's the Saturn energy, isn't it? The suppression of that and the that push to obey and comply to the rules that are being passed down to us. So are we going to obey and comply out of fear that we won't be safe and protected? Or are we going to rebel against it because we value freedom more highly?
Mm.
And so that's a real juxtaposition of those two positions. And so we're all up against that, aren't we? You know, which way are we going to go in all of the various things that they're throwing at us and have been for the last 6 years? where are our priorities? You know, are we going to go Saturnian or are we going to go Uranian?
Well, this sort of brings us to the new moon in Libra because we're talking about what we value,
Yes,
right? So
exactly.
all of this is going on in the background of that.
Yeah.
So maybe we can jump into that now.
Yeah, let's do that.
I feel
Otherwise, we could
purged now.
we could be here for hours. There's so much to talk about. This month, there's a lot happening from this new moon to the next new moon. Like astrologically, there's a lot of movements, and a lot of it's quite strong.
Mm.
So buckle up, folks, because there's a lot happening. So this new moon on the 21st of October, Brisbane time, it's 10:24 in the evening on the 21st, at 28 degrees and 21 minutes of the sign of Libra. Now, what's so significant about it is, and we can talk about Libra, but it forms a strong square to Pluto in very early Aquarius, an opposition to Chiron and Eris in Aries, and a square to Jupiter in Cancer. So it's in alignment with some pretty strong energies, particularly that square to Pluto. So, Libra is a sign that's fundamentally, its principles are fundamentally about balance, harmony, justice, peace, equanimity. And I think, the sun's been going through Libra now for the last few weeks. It's coming to the end. I want to say something about all these new moons at the end of signs in a minute as well, that we're in currently. Um, but and that's true, and I've noticed over the years, people will often say to me, oh, I know some Librans, and then they don't seem very harmonious and peaceful or balanced. It's because in this sign we're endeavoring to bring what is in disharmony into a state of harmony, and it's a daily practice in a way, and so when Libra's up for us all, we get to look at what is out of balance in my life, in myself, where is the disharmony, and how can I bring things into a much better state of harmony and peace and equanimity for myself, and hopefully that will ripple out into the world. So that's always, it's a cardinal sign, so it's quite a dynamic sign. That's always the process and the goal, if you like, in Libra, of
Mm.
what's out of balance and how do I bring more harmony back into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it wants peace at any price, basically, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think one of the downfalls of Libra, and we've spoken about this before, but it can be compromising, a bit too compromising and accommodating.
Absolutely.
And it has difficulty with anger, and it just wants to smooth the waters, make them calm, but on the positive side, that's why it makes them really good diplomats and mediators of situations and those sorts of things. So there's a positive to these things as well.
There is, and it's a sign of relationship, human relationship, that so we look at the disharmony in our relationships with other people, not just with a partner, but with people in general. And because it's a sign that's about you and me, because its opposite sign Aries is about me, but in Libra it's you and me in this relationship dynamic, and it requires that both people, both sides, actually have a conversation
Yeah,
and endeavor to come to some kind of mutual agreement, which requires a certain amount of compromise. And okay, well, I'm willing to give that up so that we can, well, what we were talking about before, you were sharing, I won't go into it, of course, but sharing about you and your partner, and you having to negotiate a little bit about rearrangement of spaces and work it out together.
yeah.
That's Libra.
Mm.
How are we going to do this? Well, I need that, but you need this.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're going to bring up the asteroid Haumea. Were you going to talk about that, or I could just jump?
Not particularly, only because I hadn't really thought about that too much, because there's so much going on with the planets. But
Yeah.
if you want to say something about that.
Well, I was just going to add because it's in Libra, because it's the goddess of regeneration and
Yeah,
restoration. But that can, because it's in Libra, it can be about our relationships too. So, through conversation, dialogue with somebody else, we may be able to restore broken energy lines where words have sort of cut them off. You know what I mean? It sort of opens
Exactly.
up the lines of communication to restore friendships and love,
Yes,
those sorts of things. So the beauty of being with other people too, So I think
exactly.
it adds that extra kick to it.
Absolutely. Because if we are having a disagreement with somebody or there's disharmony in a relationship, after a really thorough conversation, suddenly you go, oh, I never realized you felt that way because we didn't know. So it requires those kinds of conversations and discussions and negotiations, absolutely, which Libra's masterful at. That's why they're often in roles of diplomacy and negotiation and anywhere where the social harmony is required. It could be the maitre d' at a really busy restaurant. They're just, that's what they do so well. They create an environment and a vibe of harmony.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which is a beautiful thing. And my goodness, the world needs a lot more of that.
it sure does.
Yeah. But of course, the square to Pluto with this new moon and of course the new moon's setting the tone for the next 4 weeks till the next new
Yeah,
moon.
yeah,
It's square to Pluto, so there is an intensity, and that could mean that some relationships may be going through a crisis, or a situation is arising that's a crisis that now two people have to work their way through that. And it mightn't even be about the relationship, but it impacts the relationship,
yeah.
you
Mm.
know.
Mm. Yeah, with that square, I was thinking too that it's Sun and Moon square Pluto. It's shifting power to the people too. So on the day that we're recording this, which is the 19th of October, is the day when Australia-wide we're having all these marches
Yep,
that are going on about against mass immigration. So there's that. I
that's
don't know how
right.
else to say it.
Exactly. And in the UK, overnight they've had massive marches against the digital ID rollout.
Yes. Oh, it's
Absolutely.
yeah, because they want to introduce a digital ID to even work in the UK.
Mhm.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, and of course, this new moon is also in opposition to Chiron and Eris in Aries, the sign of the warrior and individual autonomy. And Eris, of course, she's famous in mythology for being that troublemaker, but she's a troublemaker who stirs things up to expose the truth about a situation, even if it causes a great disruption and conflict and even war initially. But it's like she says, you have to face something here. So it's really quite strong. And then the square to Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer is that desire to have a nurturing personal life. So there's a lot going on with this new moon.
I wanted to just mention too the Chiron and Eris conjunct in Aries. I was thinking about that because Eris, she was a goddess of chaos, but only because she was left out of being asked to go to the wedding. I can't remember of her, but you might know. But and then you've got Chiron, who was also kicked out of the family home. He was rejected because of his, he was half horse, half man. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, you know, this could be about woundedness through exclusion, and healing that. And in Libra, it could be about bringing those who we have excluded or who are excluded in society to bring them in from the cold, bring them in from that rejection that they've felt. And for me, being a UFO researcher as well, I think about people who report close encounters, and they sort of pushed to the edge of the community, the UFO community, but society in general, because of their strange experiences. And I actually coined the term edgelings but these are people who live on the edge of society because they've been rejected. So maybe we could see some movement there in Libra, although it's in Aries, but with that Libra moon,
Yes.
to help bring them in and to start to exclude them.
Yes, and I think that will be happening over the next few years, as we look ahead to all the movements, a change of
Mm,
energy coming in with the planets in the next couple of years, particularly from next year on.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So this is a particularly significant new moon, and the very next day on the 22nd,
Mm,
Neptune, who has been in Pisces for 14 years and early in the year moved into Aries for a period of time, is now retrograde. And on the 22nd, the day after the new moon, Neptune will actually slip back into Pisces.
mm,
Now, he'll be in Pisces until the end of January, but he only gets to that last half a degree. So he's not going to go back very far, but we're going to feel that. I have, and many people have felt Saturn's moved back into Pisces
yeah. Yeah.
not too long ago, and Neptune will slip back into Pisces. So, and you and I were talking earlier too about this, that, we're both going through this process of this sense of almost urgency to clear space, to
Mm,
clear energy,
mm,
to clear out the old, whatever that means in our thinking, in our physical space. Even if we think we've done that, there's still that one cupboard that we haven't, or that drawer, or that file, or, to just keep that process going during this time. Because from late January and into February next year, Saturn and Neptune move into Aries, and they come together in February, and we are in a very, very new territory then. And then, of course, as Uranus will finally leave Taurus, and then Chiron will move out of Aries and go into Taurus. So there's a lot of change coming, and I think energetically and in all kinds of ways, we can help ourselves prepare for that by clearing the space. And Neptune going into Pisces really speaks to that, and so does Saturn.
yeah. I want to skip back to the 21st of October,
Yeah.
because I was watching or reading, I can't remember where I saw it though, but that on that day we also of the new moon we also have Earth, Sun, and Three-Eye Atlas, which I mentioned in the beginning. That whatever it is, comet, although Avi Loeb talks about it as possible interstellar object,
Yeah.
they come into a straight line conjunction. Plus, there are six comets coming into our solar system that day too. So, and I think I wrote it. The largest of these comets is called C2202 2025 R2 Swan SW. My
I
God.
wish they'd give them beautiful names
Oh, I
instead of
know.
symbols
But it's all
already.
represented by the telescope that was used, the year it
Yeah,
was, all that stuff. Anyway,
boring, boring.
so the largest one of those comets will be at its closest point to Earth on that day too. No one knows what that means astrologically
No.
because it hasn't happened before that it's been recorded. Um, but I guess we just have to watch what happens on that day. But I did think about, it's an alignment. And I was wondering, could this be, if you want to look at it in astrological terms, could it be about looking at how aligned we are with Earth or with the cosmos, or, what's going on in our lives around that?
Yes, that's great. And it's funny you should say that, because this morning, as I was making the bed, very Saturnian pragmatic stuff,
Yeah.
I was thinking about that very thing, about this relationship that we have with our human self and our soul galactic self,
Yeah.
and that we are actually both, and that we are living this very human life, but knowing that we're also this other thing,
Yeah.
that we're actually galactic beings. And
Yes.
I just was like, it's just. It's amazing. It's amazing. And so all these visitors coming in from out there all at the same time,
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's energetically, it represents part of this rapid change that we're going through. And we don't know what it's going to look like, but it's moving fast.
And it's interesting. I'm watching what's going on the world stage with all these drones as well. Over Europe now is the focus. Well, what we're seeing, hearing about. Um, so we've got the drone situation over Europe, these incursions. We've got the comets. We've got the interstellar object, and it's like this is all about Aquarius. All things in the sky, in the cosmos, isn't it? It just really hit me when I was thinking about this.
Yes, yes, exactly. And it's going to really, over the next years, it's going to really shake up life on Earth in a
Mm,
way that will be very new.
yeah.
Well, maybe not entirely new if we go back way back into eons of time, but new, certainly new for us. Yeah.
Mm,
Also on the yes, it is. It's actually on the day of the new moon. There is a conjunction of Mars and Mercury, and also the black moon Lilith in
yeah.
Scorpio. But certainly Mars and Mercury will be both sitting at 20 degrees of Scorpio. So, Mercury is our voice, communication, our thinking with Mars in Scorpio that can be. And I notice that that's actually forming a grand trine in water, which will be in play kind of throughout the week, really. Trine to Saturn in Pisces, trine to Jupiter in Cancer. There's
Yeah.
a lot of water energy going on as well as the air new moon. So for some people, that can be a feeling of being pulled into something very deep emotionally, psychically, energetically. Sometimes when there's a strong water influence, particularly with Saturn there in Pisces and the Scorpio energy, we can feel that we're being pulled, sucked down into some. It might feel like a swamp with the Scorpio, but just like pulled down into a
Quicksand.
deep energy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering too, because we've got Saturn conjunct Neptune up there. I'm just looking at the chart.
Mm.
Because we've got Jupiter at 24 degrees Cancer and what is it? Neptune 0 degrees Aries. That's what's that 6 degree orb. So that would come into play as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's a 4 degree orb. It's even
Oh,
it's
is it?
even closer. So
Oh,
yeah, so Neptune and Saturn are a big story throughout pretty much the whole of this year and certainly into next year. We'll have a lot to say about that as that one progresses.
yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot happening in this chart of this particular new moon, and even Uranus himself is at 0 degrees of Gemini, retrograding and heading back into Taurus.
Mm,
Um, so that won't get there in this coming lunation, but soon after it will. So in fact, Uranus slips back into Taurus on the 8th of November.
right. Right.
Yeah. So so the new moon on the 21st, Neptune goes back into Pisces on the 22nd. On the 23rd, see, here it is again. The sun enters Scorpio.
Yeah.
So this is really strong, the energy during this period. And every year I experience it, I observe it, I feel it. When the sun goes through Scorpio, a lot happens for
Mm,
those 4 weeks when we're in the Scorpio time of year. And it can be a time of profound transformation, but also Scorpio is very much an energy that can present as crisis, as it's something erupting in our life,
mm,
erupting from the unconscious, or something's been building up and it's up it comes, and it can be very intense. It can sometimes the crisis can be really very strong. It might even have a life and death kind of quality about it.
yeah.
But we often go through a lot of deep transformation, and it might even feel some days like a dark night of the soul.
Mm,
But it's a process, it's a purging process. So From the 23rd for 4 weeks, the sun's going through Scorpio. And of course, Mars is in Scorpio.
That's
On the 20, yeah, Mars is still in Scorpio. It's coming towards the end, but it won't exit just yet. On the 29th, Mercury will exit Scorpio. So on the 29th, Mercury will go into Sagittarius. So the good news at this time of year always is that, yes, we go through a very Scorpio period with the Sun and Venus and Mercury, all around the same time will move through Scorpio. But then one by one, they will emerge out of the deep cave that Scorpio is.
mm,
And it's like arise again. It's like a resurrection, rising again into the light of day as they move into Sagittarius. So
so
Mercury will go into Sag from the 29th on the evening of the 29th.
yeah, so that Mercury in Scorpio that we're experiencing
Yeah,
is always sort of seeking to uncover hidden truths, isn't it?
yeah,
Um, yeah. And it doesn't engage in idle chit chat either. I was just
no,
thinking about that, but wants those deep, meaningful conversations. So if you've been drawn into any of that, then maybe you're talking to someone with that in their chart.
that's right. And I know in this household here, we've been having some very deep, challenging, but very good conversations about certain things. And that's the time. Like to me, Scorpio energy benefits from any kind of therapeutic process, therapy, healing, deep examination, but always looking beneath the surface so that something can be brought into the light, even if it's really challenging and difficult and even possibly dark,
Hmm.
to shed light on it, because that's how something changes and transforms and transmutes.
Do you think that it can, Mercury and Scorpio in the shadow side can give rise to too many conspiracy theories?
Sure. It's like seeing the boogeyman around every corner or in every shadow or under every bed. It's like that's right. We can obsess about, because this is a sign where we can get a bit obsessive, can
Oh,
obsess about the darkness. And there is a lot of darkness on the planet. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
yeah.
But
But
if
that
we
can,
get too obsessed about that and not remember that we're beings of light,
yeah, I think so.
we can really spiral down into some very dark, potentially dangerous territory.
Yeah, I think people can become too morbid or they can wallow in it all, can't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So knowing the dark and understanding it, in my mind view, is very important, but not to stay there. It's an important part of our process and awakening.
Mm,
Um, so then on the 30th of October, Mars in Scorpio makes an exact trine to Saturn. It's really in that trine all week, but it will make the exact trine to Saturn. That could be quite a strong day. Now, then on the 4th of November, um, Mars will be at 29 degrees of Scorpio, making an exact trine to Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces. That could be a very deep, profound day where something potentially can be really purged and cleared, because that night on the 4th,
yeah.
Mars will exit Scorpio and enter Sagittarius. So while it's at 29 degrees, trine Neptune at 29 of Pisces, it's a really amazing opportunity for something quite deep and important to be really, it kind of really be purged and brought to the light and to a peak so that we can move on,
Yeah, I think,
and clear
yes.
the space.
I was just going to say that when Mercury moves into Sagittarius later that day, we can have a wider vision and a sense of expanded possibilities. So what we were experiencing in the depths, we might feel then ready to share what we've learned.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right. And I've always been intrigued and fascinated by the fact that Scorpio precedes Sagittarius.
Mm.
So Sagittarius is all about the desire to know and to speak and live truth.
Mm.
But truth requires that we also meet the dark so that we really understand what truth means.
Yeah.
It's not some airy fairy, sparkly lights everything's unicorn and everything's nice and lovely truth. It's truth that's got a bit of guts to it. It's truth that's really been there and been through it, And you and I have been around, Cheryl, for a while. We've been through some stuff,
Yes.
yeah, so there's more knowledge and wisdom that can be shared having been through those deeper passages. And that's, yeah, I just think it's amazing that juxtaposition of Scorpio and Sagittarius.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
Um, and then on the 5th, Mars in Sagittarius makes an opposition to Uranus, and they'll both be sitting right at that 0 degrees just before Uranus leaves Taurus. So that brings us to the full moon on the 5th. The full moon will be at 13 degrees of Taurus. I wanted to say something about currently, and I meant to check in my astrology software how long this will be for, but all of the new moons for some months now, and for some while to come, they're all occurring at the very end of signs. Like this one's at 28 degrees of Libra. The next one will be at 28 degrees of Scorpio. And because of that, these new moons are all making contact with or alignments with these strong outer planets who are changing signs, that at the end of signs and at the very beginning of the next sign. So the new moon cycles that we're currently going through are all pretty potent.
Yeah.
Like we had an eclipse recently, a solar eclipse at the new moon at 29 of Virgo. It was very strong. So these lunar cycles now are particularly strong. And I think this period particularly so because it's also bringing in this Scorpio energy as well.
Mm. Mm. Well, I'm just going to let that rest there because I don't have anything else to add to that.
Okay, so then on the 7th, Venus moves out as Libra, where she's very happily been for 3 weeks, having a lovely time in the sign of Libra, in her own natural sign,
Mm.
and she will move into Scorpio. So,
Uh,
Mars exits Scorpio, Mercury exits Scorpio, but the Sun and Venus are in Scorpio.
well, that little sex pot.
I know. She's passionate.
Look up, boys. Imagine.
And she has a very seductive quality while she's in Scorpio.
Yeah.
Yeah, just naturally.
Oh, that's funny.
Um, and then the next day, Uranus will leave Taurus and actually will leave Gemini and go back into Taurus to complete
Mm.
his story. He'll only get to a couple of degrees back into Taurus, and then next year he's going to go into Gemini and stay there.
Yeah. I think it's in retrograde in Taurus until very early February or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I was looking at that the other day. I
About the
forget
fourth or
when, but
something.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, and then on the 10th, just to keep life interesting, Mercury turns retrograde
Ah.
at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And guess what? He's going to retrograde back into Scorpio. So we go, yay, Mercury's out of Scorpio and gone into Sag, but he's not quite done with it yet because he's going to retrograde and go back into Scorpio. So he retrogrades on the 6th, goes back into Scorpio on the 19th.
Okay.
Yes. And that will then bring us to the new moon on the 20th at 28 degrees of Scorpio, conjunct Mercury retrograde.
Oh,
A very close conjunction and opposite Uranus, but we'll talk more about that next time.
right. Oh, I've got my notes mixed up. I've written down new moon in Sagittarius. Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Now it'll be at the end of Scorpio. So that's that's just another one of those lunations, the new moon at the end of a sign. And so it's going to be in an alignment with the outer planet. In this case, it's like this one in Libra that we're coming into now has a square to Pluto. The new moon in November will have the opposition to Uranus. So those outer planets are really powerful evolutionary forces, and they all mean business.
Right.
And things happen, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Get out of the way. So,
Yeah.
we were talking before we started recording too about all these planetary movements. Some's been in, retrograde, etc. But by the end of April next year, they'll all be moving forward.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And even in the coming month or two,
Mm. There'll be,
many of them will start to turn
yeah,
direct. Like in late November, Saturn goes direct. In early December, Neptune goes direct. Pluto is now direct.
yeah,
So one by one, they complete their 5 month or so retrograde phase, and then they start to move forward,
yeah.
having hopefully we've processed and digested what we've needed to, and then we're ready to move to the next phase, the next step. That's right. So
What
yeah, this has been
phase?
happening for some years. We get all these retrogrades all at the same time in the second half of the year. And then one by one, right at the end of the year into the next year, they all start to move forward again. And it always feels like, right, things are moving on again.
Yeah, yeah. And it's going to be a different energy next year too. I was thinking
Very.
this year has been more about just surviving it.
It has.
There's been so much going on, and so many people I know, including myself, have had some, health problems, sore knees, sore hips, all this sort of stuff as well. But like things that were restrictive, and couldn't sort of move around as much as normal, or just health problems in general. The people who've died as well. We didn't even talk about that, all the celebrities that have died this year, but I guess it was their time. Maybe it was their third Saturn return. I can't quite remember. I think Robert Redford died at 88, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. In his
Yes.
sleep, bless him. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but next year it's going to be quite different,
Hmm.
fast.
Yeah. Very, very different. Yeah.
And
And, this year is a 9 years. We know it's been the year of the snake. It's been big purge this year. And just everybody I know, clients, students, friends, family, they're all just going,
yeah,
feeling a bit shell shocked almost. It's been massive this year.
it has been. And every year's had a different theme too,
Yeah. Yeah.
And even though we haven't been restricted, well, there are things in place that have been put into place and still putting into place to restrict us in a different way.
Yeah.
The ethers,
Yeah.
through cameras, when you're out in the street, through these digital IDs and different currencies, digital currencies and all that. Just try, and it's a real worry about being controlled.
That's right. And it's a real test for humanity. And how we're going to approach that and deal with that, and how we're going to do that together, as a collective, because we all have an individual choice to make. And I have these conversations with my daughter, because if we make the choice we want to, that's going to have an impact on us.
Mm,
But for me, I know I have to go with what my soul calls me to do as my number one priority. So yeah, so these are big
mm.
times. But we've been in training
Yes,
since 2020.
yes, exactly. It has been a sort of a lesson in school, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
To
yeah.
prepare.
That's right. And to get clear on, where we stand on all of these things. And yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Okie dokie then. Well, that's enough to digest for till the next new
I
moon.
think so. I think that'll keep us all busy over the next 4 weeks.
I think so. So thank you, Babula, for sharing all your ideas, thoughts, insights into the planetary movements, and thank you to everyone who has been leaving comments and liking the channel or liking the episodes. We appreciate that because we know that helps us feel that there's a good reason to do what we do and keep on
Yeah.
doing it.
And we're not just talking into the void.
No, no, not the wolf in the wilderness. Yeah. I,
I know we're not, because I know a lot of people tell me in person and through messages that they really do appreciate it.
yeah,
So,
I'm,
but yeah, it's nice to get that.
it is nice to get that feedback because this is all free. We don't do it for any money. And yeah, so all we can get is a few accolades now and a good on
And
the back.
just we do it because we hope that it helps people
Yeah, exactly.
to navigate these wild times we're living in. That's right.
Yeah, I was having a chat earlier about why I've got two really deep interests. One is in the UFO phenomenon, one is in astrology. And I keep doing the astrology because it connects me to what's going on in the world, but it also helps me derive meaning from
Yeah.
it, which
Yeah.
people need. They need that meaning to navigate the times that we're living in, this great shift in paradigms, because it we just needed to help us stay balanced too, I think. Talking
We
about
really do.
Libra. Yeah.
Yeah, and astrology for me has always been something, it just helps to make sense of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay, everyone. So that's it from us for now. So if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like it. Feel free to leave your comments, share it with friends, and we will see you next time for the next new moon cycle. So until then, stay safe and be well. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.